Dr. He-jin's three-fingered hand shook as she brushed dust from the metal panel. After 20 years of digging through Earth's ruins, this was different. This wasn't another empty building or broken machine. This was a door, and behind it lay answers to humanity's disappearance. Dr. He-jin, you need to see this. Her assistant, a tall, blue-skinned Meridian named Kex, called from the other side of the dig site. The energy readings are getting stronger. He-jin stood up, her protective suit creaking in the cold morning air. Earth's sun was rising over the ruins of what humans had called New York. The empty buildings reached up into the orange sky like giant fingers covered in green plants. Coming, she called back, careful not to step on any important pieces as she walked across the dig site. Her people, the Orcsons, were known for being careful and thorough. That's why the Galactic Council had chosen her team to study Earth. Kex pointed at his scanner screen. Look at these patterns. They're not random. Something down there is still running after all these centuries. He-jin looked at the numbers and felt her heart beat faster. Get the drilling team. Now. 3 hours later, they had opened a path into the underground chamber. He-jin led the way, her light beam cutting through the darkness. The air was stale but breathable. Everything was covered in dust, but otherwise, the room looked untouched. Clean. Preserved. By the stars, she whispered. Rows and rows of metal pods filled the massive room. Each pod was connected to thick cables that ran into the walls, and in each pod, visible through small windows, were humans. They're everywhere, Kex said, his voice filled with wonder. Are they sleeping? He-jin finished. She walked to the nearest pod and wiped the dust from its control panel. Green lights blinked steadily. They're in some kind of suspended animation. They didn't die out or leave Earth. They chose to sleep. She moved her light across the room. The pods seemed to go on forever. There must be thousands in this facility alone. And if there's one facility, there could be more all over the planet, Kex said. He was already taking readings with his scanner. The power systems are still working. Whatever they use to keep these pods running, it's incredibly advanced. More advanced than anything we have now. He-jin touched the cold surface of the pod. Inside, a human woman lay perfectly still, her face peaceful. What had made them do this? What could have been so terrible that an entire species chose to go to sleep? A soft beeping sound made her jump. A large screen on the wall had come to life, responding to their presence. Words appeared in the human language he had studied for years. Atlas Defense System. Active. Unayuthu. Orizes de Proisensi TETCTE. Ining ITIATINGZCURIT Turo Tosevas. Everyone out, He-jin shouted. But before they could move, more words appeared. Species IDNTIFIE. 8RXIN. Meridian. 3AT Ilvil. Minimal. INITIATING First Contact Protocols. A gentle voice filled the room, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Welcome, researchers. I am Atlas, guardian of humanity. You have questions. I have answers. But first, I must ask, is your galaxy ready for humanity to wake up? He-jin looked at the sleeping humans, then at her team, then back at the screen. In all her years of research, she had never expected this. Humanity hadn't died. They hadn't run away. They had been waiting. But for what? She took a deep breath and spoke clearly. I am Dr. He-jin of the Galactic Archaeological Council, and I believe we need to talk. The screen pulsed softly as Atlas replied. Indeed we do, Dr. He-jin. Indeed we do. But I must warn you, waking humanity will change everything. Are you prepared for that responsibility? He-jin looked at her team. They all knew that after this moment, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. This wasn't just a discovery. This was the beginning of something much bigger. And somewhere in the facility, A pod's light changed from green to yellow, starting a countdown that would reshape the galaxy forever. Captain Du Young stood on the bridge of his ship, the stellar observer, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. His antennae twitched nervously as he read the latest report from Dr. Hejin's team. 3 more sleeping facilities had been found in the past week alone. Captain, called Science Officer Kita from his station, "We're picking up strange energy readings from the planet's surface." Do Young walked over to Kita's screen. The young science officer's scales shimmered with excitement as he pointed to the data. "Look at these patterns. They're spreading." "Spreading?" Du Young leaned closer. Red dots were appearing all over the planet's surface map. "How many facilities are activating?" "That's just it, sir," Kita said, his tail swishing anxiously. "These aren't just the sleeping facilities. These are defense systems, old human defense systems, waking up one by one." The bridge fell silent. Du Young felt his heart skip a beat. "Get me Dr. Hejin now." The xenorchaeologist's face appeared on the screen moments later. She looked tired but excited. "Captain, are you seeing this? Atlas is activating more systems." "Doctor, what have you done?" Du Young asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Nothing," Hejin protested. "Atlas is doing this on its own. It says it's running something called revival preparation protocols. The defense systems are coming online to protect the sleeping humans during the wake-up process." A new alarm started beeping. Kita's fingers flew over his controls. "Captain, something's happening. Large objects are emerging from Earth's oceans." The main screen switched to show massive structures rising from the waves. They were sleek, metallic, and clearly of human design. As they watched, the structures began to unfold like giant flowers made of metal and energy. "Those are orbital defense platforms." Atlas's calm voice came through their speakers. "They are necessary to ensure humanity's safe awakening." Do Young straightened his uniform. "Atlas, I must inform you that activating weapons systems could be seen as a hostile act by the Galactic Council." "These are not weapons, Captain Du Young," Atlas replied. "They are shields. What you are witnessing is the reactivation of Earth's protective grid. Humanity knew they would be vulnerable during the revival process. They planned accordingly." More alarms sounded. Kita gasped. "Sir, the platforms are powering up. They're creating some kind of energy field around the planet." Do Young watched as shimmering curtains of light began to spread between the platforms, slowly forming a protective bubble around Earth. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Captain," Hejin's voice was urgent, "you need to see this. Atlas is showing us why humanity needed these defenses. Come down to the main facility." 20 minutes later, Du Young stood with Hejin and Kita in front of a large holographic display. Atlas was showing them recordings from humanity's past, images of a war they had never known about. "Humanity did not choose sleep because they were weak," Atlas explained. "They chose it because they were strong enough to wait. The enemy they faced could not be defeated through conventional means. So humanity developed a different strategy: patience." The images showed massive ships of an unknown design, unlike anything in the current galaxy. "These beings exist outside of normal spacetime," Atlas continued. "Humanity discovered they would return in approximately 400 years. Rather than exhaust themselves in an endless war, they chose to sleep and prepare." "How long?" Du Young asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The enemy will return in less than 1 standard year," Atlas replied. "That is why the revival process must begin now. Humanity must be ready." Hejin touched the window of the nearest pod, where a human still slept peacefully. "We didn't just find humanity," she said. "We found them exactly when they needed to be found." Do Young looked at his science officer. Kita nodded silently, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Du Young ordered. Tell them humanity isn't just waking up. They're waking up to fight. Ambassador Yuri felt all 6 eyes of the Galactic Council's security chief glaring at her. The large chamber was filled with representatives from 50 different species, all talking at once. Some were scared. Others were angry. None of them were happy. "You mean to tell us," the security chief growled, "that humanity has been hiding on Earth this whole time? With weapons?" Yuri stood straight, her silvery diplomatic uniform catching the light. "Not hiding, Chief. Sleeping. And those aren't weapons. They're defensive shields." "How convenient," sneered Representative Mox of the Trading Worlds, his furry face twisted in a scowl. "They sleep for centuries, and just when we find them, they claim a great enemy is coming. At last has shown us proof," Yuri said calmly. She pressed a button on her panel. The chamber's central display lit up with images from Earth's archives. "Look at these records. The technology humanity had even back then was far beyond what we have now." The images showed huge ships, amazing machines, and devices no one in the room could understand. The council members fell quiet, studying the displays with growing concern. If they were so advanced, asked a small green representative, why did they need to sleep? "Because they were smart," came a new voice. Dr. Hijin walked into the chamber, carrying a data crystal. They knew they couldn't win a direct fight. The enemy was too powerful, so they made a plan. She placed the crystal in the reader. New images appeared, diagrams of the sleep pods, the shield network, and something else. Something bigger. Humanity didn't just go to sleep, Hijin explained. They spent 50 years preparing. They built defenses that would last centuries. They created 8 laws to watch over them. And they left us a message. The display changed again. A human face appeared. An old man with kind eyes. "To those who find us," the recording began, "we are sorry for any worry we may cause you. We aren't running away. We aren't building an army. We are protecting you. All of you. The enemy we face feeds on conscious thought. As long as we were awake, we were putting the whole galaxy in danger. Our sleep was not surrender. It was our first line of defense." The chamber was completely silent now. Yuri looked at the faces around her. The anger was changing to confusion and maybe a little shame. "The defensive grid that's activating," Heijin continued, "it's not just for Earth. Once fully powered, it can protect the whole sector. Humanity built it to protect everyone, not just themselves." "And what do they want in return?" Mox asked, but his voice had lost its anger. "Nothing," Yuri said. "They did this centuries ago, without knowing if anyone would even find them. They did it because they could, because they had the power to help." The security chief's expression softened slightly. "How long until they wake up?" "The first group is starting to revive now," Hijin answered. "But they'll need help. Their world has changed. Our medicines, our technologies, our societies, everything will be new to them." Yuri stepped forward. "That's why I'm here. I'm not asking for the Council's permission. Humanity is waking up whether we like it or not. I'm asking for your help. We can fear them, or we can welcome them as allies against a threat that could destroy us all." The council chamber buzzed with quiet discussion. Finally, the security chief spoke. "Ambassador Yuri," he said formally, "what kind of help do they need?" Yuri smiled for the first time that day. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be a diplomatic disaster after all. But as she began to list humanity's needs, a new alarm sounded. "Emergency signal from Earth," a technician called out. "One of the sleep pods is opening early. Someone is waking up." Dr. Song-min's hands moved quickly over the medical equipment as the sleep pod's lights changed from green to blue. Steam hissed from the edges as the pod began its opening sequence. Around him, aliens from 5 different species watched nervously. "Life signs are strong," he reported, his sensitive fingers feeling the vibrations from the pod. "The human's heart rate is increasing normally." Hijin stood nearby, recording everything. Captain Du Young watched from the door, his security team ready for anything. The pod's windows slowly cleared, showing their first awakening human, a woman in a military uniform with colonel's ranks on her shoulders. Pod identity confirmed. Atlas announced, Colonel Jai-1, Earth Defense Force, Combat Specialist and Strategic Commander. The pod opened with a soft click. Everyone held their breath. Colonel Ji-1's eyes fluttered, then opened. She looked at the aliens around her without surprise or fear. "Did we make it?" she asked, her voice rough from centuries of sleep. "How long?" 412 years, Colonel, Atlas replied. And yes, the plan worked. Earth survived. Jai-1 tried to sit up. Song-min moved to help her, then stopped. Unsure if he should touch her, she smiled at him. "It's okay, Doctor. We learned all about your species in our preparation time. You're an axolotl, right? The best medical minds in the galaxy." Song-min's spots turned pink with surprise. You knew about us. But we didn't even join the galactic community until 200 years ago. We didn't go to sleep unprepared, Jai-1 explained, finally sitting up. We spent decades studying the galaxy, predicting how species would evolve and develop. Atlas kept learning while we slept, updating our knowledge banks. She looked at each alien in turn, naming their species perfectly. When she got to Hejin, she switched to perfect Arxan language. "Thank you for finding us. I hope we didn't scare you too much with the defense grid activation." Hejin's mouth fell open. "You speak my language. All our languages." "We had time to learn," Jai-1 said, standing carefully. "Lots of time. We knew we'd need to hit the ground running when we woke up. The enemy doesn't give second chances." Captain Du Young stepped forward. "About this enemy, Colonel, your records aren't clear about what they are." Jai-1's face grew serious. "That's because they're hard to describe in any language. We call them the void minds. They don't exist in normal space. They feed on conscious thought, on intelligence itself. The more advanced a species becomes, the more they're drawn to it. And they're coming back." Song-min asked, checking Jai-1's vital signs as she talked. "Yes, that's why Atlas started the wake-up process. Our scientists predicted their return almost to the day. We have less than a year to prepare." She walked to a nearby window, looking at the shield grid glowing in Earth's sky. "But we're not starting from zero. Those shields are just the beginning. Humanity spent 50 years building weapons and defenses that would last through our sleep. Now it's time to wake them all up." "All?" Du Young asked nervously. Jai-1 turned back to them, her eyes bright with purpose. "Everything. The shield grid, the defense platforms, the hidden fleets, and most importantly, the rest of humanity. But we'll need help. 400 years is a long time. We need to know everything that's changed." She looked at each of them again. "Will you help us, not just to wake up, but to save everyone? Because that's what we went to sleep for. Not just to hide, not just to survive, but to be ready when we were needed most." Song-min checked his medical readings one last time, then straightened up. "I'll help. You're now my patient, Colonel, whether you like it or not." One by one, the others nodded. But before anyone could speak, Atlas's voice filled the room. "Alert. Long-range sensors detecting spatial anomalies. The enemy may be scouting earlier than predicted. Time to full awakening of humanity, estimated 3 months. Time until first enemy contact, estimated 2 months." Jai-1 closed her eyes for a moment. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess we'll have to work fast." Colonel Jai-1 stood in the old command center with Dr. Hejin, watching as more screens came to life. Around them, humans were waking up by the hundreds now. The halls echoed with voices as medical teams, led by Dr. Song-min, helped the newly awakened adjust. "Show them," Jai-1 told Atlas. "Show them what we found 400 years ago." The main screen filled with images that made Hejin step back in shock. She saw giant ships that looked like they were made of darkness itself. They moved in ways that hurt her eyes to watch. We called them void mines, Jai-1 explained. But that's not what they really are. They're what's left of the first ones, the first species to achieve space travel in our galaxy. What happened to them? He-Jin asked, unable to look away from the strange ships. They tried to become gods. Jai-1's voice was heavy with sadness. They found a way to turn their entire civilization into pure energy and thought, but something went wrong. They lost their bodies, their forms, and finally their sanity. Now they feed on the thoughts and consciousness of other beings to stay alive. New images appeared. Worlds turned dark and empty, their people left like shells without minds. We found their old records, Jai-1 continued. They visit the galaxy every few hundred years, feeding on the most advanced civilizations they can find. Then they return to their space between spaces to sleep and digest. He-Jin felt cold, and they were coming for Earth. Yes, we were becoming too advanced, too noticeable, like a bright light attracting hungry predators. But then we found something interesting. Jai-1 pressed some buttons, and new images appeared. Watch this. The screen showed the dark ships passing right by a primitive world without stopping. They can't sense simple minds or sleeping minds very well, Jai-1 explained. So we came up with a crazy plan. What if an entire civilization could hide itself by going to sleep? Not just a few people, but everyone. That's why you built the pods. He-Jin said, understanding finally coming to her. But why wake up now? Before Jai-1 could answer, alarms started blaring. Captain Du-Young rushed into the room. Colonel, our scout ships have detected something at the edge of the solar system. 3 objects, moving in that strange way you described. Scouts, Jai-1 said grimly. They're checking if we're still here. Atlas, show us. The screen changed to show 3 small dark shapes moving through space. They twisted in ways that seemed impossible, leaving trails of disturbed reality behind them. They're early, Jai-1 muttered. We're not ready. How many humans are awake? 4,312. Atlas reported. Minimum safe number for defense operations is 10,000. We can help, He-Jin said quickly. The Galactic Council has ships nearby. We can. No. Jai-1 grabbed He-Jin's arm. You can't fight them directly. That's what they want. The more you think about them, the more you try to understand them, the more they can sense you. That's why we had to make the shields special. They don't just block physical attacks, they block thought itself. Do-Young's antennae twitched nervously. Then what can we do? Jai-1 walked to another console and pressed her hand against it. The room hummed as Military Commander Tahi walked through rows of massive robots in the underground hangar. Each machine stood 30 meters tall, their metal shells gleaming under the bright lights. He had just woken up an hour ago, but there was no time for rest. These are the mindless ones, he explained to Captain Du-Young, who followed him with wide eyes. Robots that don't need pilots. They don't think. They just act. The perfect weapons against enemies that feed on thought. How many do you have? Du-Young asked, his antennae twitching as he looked up at the giant machines. In this base, 200. Worldwide, over 10,000. Tahi smiled at Du-Young's shocked expression. We were busy before we went to sleep. Colonel Ji-1's voice came over the speakers. Commander, the scout ships are getting closer. Are the mindless ones ready? Almost, Tahi replied. He pressed his hand against a control panel. The robot's eyes lit up one by one, glowing with soft blue light. Atlas, begin activation sequence. The huge hangar doors above them started to open. Sunlight poured in as the robots began to move. They walked forward in perfect lines, their heavy steps making the ground shake. Amazing, Du-Young whispered. But will they be enough? They're just the first surprise, Tahi said. Follow me. They walked to another section of the base. This room was filled with strange silver spheres, each about the size of a car. "These are our secret weapon," Tahi explained. "We call them void bombs. They don't explode. They create spaces where thought can't exist, like tiny holes in reality." "You're going to trap them," Du Young realized. "Exactly. The void mines may be powerful, but they still need space to exist. These bombs take that space away." Alarms started ringing throughout the base. Jae-won's voice came again, more urgent this time. "The scout ships have entered the defense grid. They're trying to probe the shields." Tahi ran to the control room with Du Young close behind. The main screen showed the 3 dark ships pressing against Earth's shield network. Where they touched, the shields rippled like water. "Launch the first wave," Tahi ordered. "Mindless ones, engage the enemy." Outside, the giant robots rocketed into space. They moved with impossible speed for their size, charging straight at the scout ships. The dark vessels tried to twist away, but the robots didn't hesitate or think about where to attack. They simply acted. "It's working," Du Young shouted as the first robot smashed into a scout ship. The dark vessel shuddered, its impossible shape becoming more solid, more real. "They can't handle physical attacks they can't predict," Tahi explained. "Their power comes from reading minds and reacting. But you can't read the mind of something that doesn't think." The battle in space looked like a strange dance. The scout ships tried to use their reality-bending powers, but the robots ignored the laws of physics just as completely. Where the void minds tried to be unpredictable, the mindless ones were simply unstoppable. "Now," Tahi commanded, "launch the void bombs." Silver spheres shot up from Earth's surface. They flew between the fighting robots and ships, then burst open. Where each sphere broke, space itself seemed to fold inward. One of the scout ships got caught in the effect. It twisted and stretched, trying to escape, then vanished with a flash of dark light. "First target eliminated," Atlas reported. "Second target attempting to retreat. Third target has been damaged and is showing signs of physical manifestation." "Don't let them escape," G1's voice ordered. "If they report back to the main fleet, we lose our advantage of surprise." The mindless ones moved with renewed purpose. They surrounded the remaining scout ships, herding them toward more void bombs. Within minutes, it was over. Du Young stared at the screen in amazement. "You did it. You actually did it." "No," Tahi said quietly. "This was just the beginning. Those were scouts. The real battle hasn't even started yet. But at least now they know humanity isn't sleeping anymore." High above Earth, the shield grid pulsed with power as more defense systems came online. The war that humanity had spent centuries preparing for was finally starting. The combined fleet hung in space like a cloud of metal stars. 5,000 ships from 30 different alien species floated beside 200 human vessels that had just risen from Earth's oceans. Colonel Jae-won stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the massive fleet through the viewing window. "I never thought I'd see this," Captain Du Young said, standing beside her. "So many species working together." "The void mines are everyone's enemy," Jae-won replied. "They've hurt every species in the galaxy at some point. We just didn't know it was all the same enemy until now." The ship's sensors started beeping. He-jin, who had insisted on staying to help, checked the readings. Large space distortions detected. "They're coming." The main screen showed a terrible sight. Hundreds of dark ships, each bigger than a city, were tearing their way into normal space. They moved like oil and water, their shapes constantly changing. "All ships, battle positions," G1 ordered. "Remember the plan. Don't think about them directly. Let the automated systems do the targeting." Do Young moved to his station. Galactic Fleet responding. All ships switching to automatic targeting systems. The human ships moved forward first. They were strange vessels, covered in smooth metal that seemed to drink in light. No windows, no visible weapons, just smooth shapes that hurt the eyes to look at too long. Mindless ships, Jai-1 explained to Huijin, who was staring at them. Like the robots, but bigger. No crew, no thoughts, just weapons that follow simple orders. The Void Mind fleet came closer. Their dark ships spread out, trying to surround the Allied fleet. But something was wrong. They moved slower than before, less sure of themselves. They're confused, Jai-1 said with a small smile. They can't read our ship's minds because there are no minds to read. And the alien ships are all running on automatic systems. Launching void bombs, Tahi's voice came over the communication system. All ships, prepare for reality distortion. Thousands of silver spheres shot out from the human ships. They flew between the two fleets and burst open. Space itself seemed to tear apart, creating holes in reality that the void minds couldn't cross. Now, Jai-1 ordered, all ships, attack. The battle that followed was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The mindless ships crashed through space like unstoppable forces, hitting the dark ships head-on. The alien fleet fired weapons that bent light and twisted gravity. The void minds tried to fight back, but their usual tricks didn't work. They're used to fighting thinking enemies, Jai-1 explained as they watched. They read minds and predict actions, but you can't predict a machine that doesn't think. You can't confuse a computer that only follows simple orders. A huge explosion lit up space as one of the largest dark ships was caught between 3 void bombs. It stretched like rubber, then vanished into nothing. More explosions followed as the combined fleet pressed their advantage. They're retreating, Dugong shouted. The void minds are pulling back. But Jai-1's face stayed serious. No, they're gathering together. Look. The dark ships were moving into a tight group. As they came together, they started to merge, their shapes flowing into each other like drops of black water joining together. By the stars, Huijin whispered. What are they doing? Something desperate, Jai-1 answered. Something we didn't predict. She hit the communication button. All ships, fall back. Get behind the mindless ships. The giant mass of darkness was still growing, pulling in all the remaining void mind ships. It was becoming something new, something massive. Jai-1. Atlas's voice came through the speakers. I'm detecting thought patterns we've never seen before. They're combining their consciousness into one entity. The dark mass finally stopped growing. It was now the size of a small moon, and it was starting to move toward Earth. They're not retreating, Jai-1 said quietly. They're adapting. This is what we were afraid of. Their final form. She looked at her allies. And now we have to stop it before it reaches Earth, or everything we planned will mean nothing. The giant mass of combined void minds moved toward Earth like a dark star. On the flagship's bridge, Colonel Jai-1 watched with Commander Tahi, Captain Du Young, and Dr. Huijin as their fleet regrouped. At last, Jai-1 called out, Is it time? Yes, the AI responded. All systems are ready. Awakening the final protocol. Deep under Earth's oceans, something massive began to move. The sea pulled away as a huge shape rose from the depths. It was a station bigger than any city, shaped like a flower with 1,000 metal petals. What is that? Huijin asked in wonder. The real reason we went to sleep, Jai-1 said. We call it the Mind Garden. For 400 years, it's been growing something special. The station's petals began to open. Inside, a bright light glowed with rainbow colors. The combined fleet moved aside as the light grew stronger. The void minds feed on thought, Tahi explained. So we spent centuries growing thoughts they couldn't eat. Pure, protected consciousness. The opposite of their dark energy. The giant dark mass stopped moving. It seemed confused by the new light. All ships, clear the area, Jai-1 ordered. This is going to get strange. The Mind Garden's light shot out in all directions. Where it touched the dark mass, colors spread like paint in water. The void minds tried to pull away, but the light followed them. They can't escape. Atlas reported. The light is touching their consciousness directly. The dark mass began to change. Parts of it started to become transparent, showing stars through its body. Other parts turned different colors, like a rainbow trapped in black glass. What's happening to them? Du Yum asked. We're giving them back their sanity, Jai-1 said quietly. The first ones lost their minds when they turned themselves into pure thought. We've spent 400 years growing the one thing that could help them. New minds. Clean ones, sane ones. The light grew brighter. The dark mass was almost completely clear now, shot through with beautiful colors. Then, slowly, it began to break apart. But instead of dangerous dark ships, small points of light floated away from it. They're healing, He-Jin whispered. Look. Tahi pointed at the main screen. The points of light were taking shapes, beautiful crystal ships that glowed with soft colors. A new voice spoke through their communications, unlike anything they had heard before. It was like music and thought combined. We remember, the voice said. We remember who we were, what we were meant to be. Jai-1 stepped forward. You were the first ones, the first to reach the stars. And you can be again, but without the darkness this time. Yes, the voice agreed. We understand now. We have been asleep in our own way, lost in darkness. You slept to wake us up. The crystal ships moved together, forming a beautiful pattern in space. We must go, the voice said. We have much to think about, much to rebuild, but we will return one day, not as hunters, but as friends. The ships began to glow brighter. Then, in a flash of rainbow light, they vanished. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Du Yum laughed. You did it. You actually did it. We all did it, Jai-1 corrected him. Humans, aliens, everyone together. That was the real secret, not the weapons or the shields or even the mind garden. It was knowing we would need each other in the end. He-Jin looked at Earth through the window. The shield grid was powering down, and the morning sun was rising over the planet. So what happens now? She asked. Jai-1 smiled. Now humanity really wakes up. We have a lot to learn about how the galaxy has changed. And you all have a lot to learn about us too. She looked at her new friends. I think it's going to be an interesting time for everyone. On Earth below, more sleep pods were opening. Humanity was coming back, not to a war, but to a new beginning. And somewhere in the universe, the first ones were finding their way home too. It turned out that humanity's biggest oops wasn't an accident at all. It was exactly what the galaxy needed.